All right, we are now recording, and I am going to invite our first couple speakers. I know Deantha and Emily are going to do a little tag team at the beginning, so I'm going to invite them to come to the front and share their screen and get us rolling here.
Great, thank you, Jim.
Fantastic.
Are you able to see my screen?
Your slides
Yep.
look great, Deantha.
Fantastic. Great. So I would just like to start off by expressing my gratitude to you, Jim, for inviting us to talk about the ring and also to all the attendees present today. I'd also like to thank the attendees for sending their comments and their questions in, as this really significantly shaped the content of our presentation. So I'm just going to move on. As Jim mentioned, we will have four presenters who will take on different segments of the presentation, but I'd like to run you through the presentation overview. We will cover four main areas. I will present on the overview of the monthly DVR, or the ring, and our efforts to maximize access and implementation. Then my colleague Emily will take you through the future of the ring, and then our civil society experts, Yvette and Chilufia, will provide you with their perspectives and experience. So now I would like to go over some key characteristics about the ring. As we all know, it is a flexible silicone ring that contains 25 milligrams of Dapivirine for HIV prevention. It is inserted vaginally every month. People who can use the ring are HIV uninfected women aged 16 years and above, which include breastfeeding women as well. Regarding the efficacy of the ring, clinical trials have shown about a 30% efficacy, then followed by open label extension studies that showed an over 50% efficacy. What we found was that adherence to the product was a contributing factor to the varied efficacy that was observed. There was further analysis done on clinical trial data that then showed when the ring is used as intended, when it's used consistently, efficacy can be as high as 63 to 91%. With regards to safety, the ring has shown a favorable safety profile across multiple studies with no impact on fertility or menstruation. So now I'd like to play a video on how the ring can be used and some key considerations around the ring. Please just let me know if you are able to hear the audio.
The Dapivirine vaginal ring is a flexible silicone ring. It contains an anti-HIV drug called dapivirine, which works by blocking HIV's ability to make copies of itself. To reduce the risk of HIV infection, a woman inserts and replaces the ring every month. Set it and forget it. Before inserting the ring into your vagina, wash your hands in clean water and dry them. Check the expiry date on the package label. Do not use if the ring is damaged or expired. Tear the package open. In a clean place, remove the ring from its package. Choose a comfortable position for you to insert the ring, such as raising one leg, squatting, or lying down. Before we show you how to insert the ring, it's important to understand your reproductive system. Your vagina is a part of your reproductive system, along with your uterus and cervix. The ring will sit at the base of your cervix. To insert the ring, squeeze it into a number 8 shape or squeeze the sides of the ring together. Using your other hand, hold open the folds of the skin around your vagina. Place the tip of the ring into the opening of your vagina, then use your index finger to gently push the folded ring in. Push the ring into your vagina as far as you can. If the ring is uncomfortable or painful, it might not be far enough. Try pushing it in further or removing and reinserting. If it still feels uncomfortable or painful, remove the ring and contact your clinic or doctor. After insertion, wash your hands in clean water and dry them. The ring has a favorable safety profile. Side effects are generally mild to moderate and resolve with no interruptions in ring use. These could include urinary tract infections, vaginal discharge or itching, and pelvic or lower abdominal pain. The ring needs to be in place for 24 hours before it offers HIV protection. With the ring in place, you can go about your daily activities as usual. You do not need to remove the ring to clean it. The ring must stay inserted for a month to be effective. It should not be removed during the month. You can have sex with the ring inserted. The ring should not be removed during or after sex in order for it to do its job. It is rarely felt by either partner. There is no need to remove the ring during menstruation. It can be used with tampons. The ring can also be used with some forms of contraception, such as the female condom, oral contraception, hormonal injections, IUD, and implants. But it is not recommended for use with the diaphragm, contraceptive vaginal ring, cervical cap, or menstrual cup. At the end of the month, the ring should be removed. A new ring should be inserted right away. Before removing the ring, wash your hands with clean water and dry them. Choose a comfortable position with your legs apart. Then hook the ring with your finger and gently pull it out. Place the used ring in the empty package of the new ring or in tissue or toilet paper. Place it in the rubbish bin out of reach of children or pets. Wash your hands with clean water and dry them. For more information, visit your nearest clinic and speak to a provider.
So, as mentioned in the video, the ring has a favorable safety profile, and this was well established in our clinical trials. So, the results of our clinical trials show a low systemic exposure to dapivirine. So, this means that low concentrations of the drug end up in the bloodstream. So, this means a low potential to interact with other drugs. What we also saw was with continuous use, there was no increase in frequency of adverse events, which makes this product favorable for long-term use. Beyond the clinical trials, we also saw no safety concerns in special populations like women aged 16 and above, as well as pregnant and breastfeeding women. So now I'd like to take you through some of our efforts to maximize access as well as implementation of the ring. So now looking at regulatory approvals. So the ring has been approved by local medicines regulators in 10 countries across Africa, with import permits in 2 countries, being Eswatini and Lesotho, who follow South African medicines regulator guidance. So this really highlights that medicines regulators recognize the utility of this product. We also have 2 applications that are currently under review in Ghana and Ethiopia. So now I'd like to put a spotlight on global implementation. There are a number of planned and ongoing implementation studies currently underway. So I'm just going to highlight a few of these implementation studies and pilot studies. So Kenya has 2 small-scale pilot studies delivering the ring through family planning clinics. Mozambique is delivering the ring through youth-friendly services. In Zimbabwe, there is a small pilot study at the Mbara Clinic, a public health clinic. In Botswana, there is a pilot study looking at use in pregnant women. In Lesotho, they are piloting the ring through a community-centered chronic care model. In Indonesia, they've recently started a pilot study that's focusing on ring provision to sex workers. And in Honduras, they are providing the ring through MSF key populations clinics, as well as conducting night outreach at sex worker hotspots and through a schools-based SRH program. So as you can see, there are multiple populations as well as service delivery points that are currently being explored. Now looking at countries who are planning for rollout. So Uganda and Zambia have applied to receive a large quantity of rings through the SIF Global Fund Early Market Access Initiative, and they are currently awaiting for the shipment of over 20,000 rings for programmatic use. We are currently providing operational assistance to these countries with a focus on healthcare provider training, stakeholder engagement, as well as community engagement, and support with demand creation strategies. In addition, IPM South Africa and the POP Council are donating rings to Kenya, as NASCOP has expressed a keen interest in providing choice. Malawi as well is another country that has shown keen interest in providing choice, and we are currently in discussion with them to identify their specific needs and areas for assistance. Now looking at countries that have moved forward with public health rollout of the ring, Eswatini has been rolling out the ring in the public sector since late 2024. Initially, this was being done solely through primary healthcare clinics, and now since February 2026, the Ministry of Health's PrEP core team has endorsed community provision through community healthcare workers. We are currently working collaboratively with the Ministry of Health to provide assistance with provider training, community engagement, as well as demand creation strategies and activities. So now I'd like to run you through some key findings from implementation studies. So prior to the US stop work order, a large-scale USAID-funded implementation study called the Catalyst study was underway in Kenya, Lesotho, South Africa, Uganda, and Zimbabwe. And this study was providing both oral PrEP and the ring through 27 USAID-supported public health facilities. So data from the study is still under analysis, but interim data has showed us that when offered a method, about a third of women chose the ring, and this was largely due to ease of use and not needing to swallow pills. Regarding 1 month return, the ring showed higher rates of return compared to oral PrEP, as well as ring users reporting higher rates of adherence. So all positive findings towards the acceptability and use of the ring. So now looking at Eswatini specifically, prior to Eswatini moving forward with their public health rollout, an implementation study was conducted through the then Mosaic Consortium. The findings then showed us that about 72% of participants, when offered an HIV prevention product, chose the ring at enrollment. And in terms of their 1 month return rate, around 50% returned for a ring refill. And looking at continuation rates of that 50%, 75% continued with the ring. So these results show an even higher choice and continuation of the ring. So now moving on to Mozambique, who have recently conducted an implementation study through ICAP. They were offering the ring through existing PrEP services at youth-friendly clinics in the Nampula province. Now, findings here suggest that of the adolescent girls and young women that were offered the ring, 72% initiated. Of the 72%, 98% were PrEP naive. So this now highlights to us that the ring fills a gap that other current prevention methods are unable to fill. In addition, the return rate of follow-up visits was around 74%. So amongst this population, the ring showed high acceptability and no seroconversions at follow-up visits amongst ring users. So this supports the addition of the ring in the PrEP method mix in Mozambique. So now I'd like to speak about rollout strategies that are being employed by Eswatini as well as Zambia, who are moving forward with larger scale rollouts. So in Eswatini, the rollout of the ring is, as I mentioned earlier, through public health facilities and now more recently through community initiation. So they have commenced with refills being supported by their HTS counselors as well as peer educators. They have also employed a multi-month dispensing method, so looking at 3 and 6 month supplies being provided to clients. And this is coupled with an HIV self-test to be conducted every 3 months. In addition, Eswatini has placed no restrictions on the use of the ring to pregnant women as well as breastfeeding women and women aged 16 and above. Now looking at Zambia, the National PrEP Task Force is currently planning phase 1 implementation, and this will commence with 1,200 donated rings from IPM and the POP Council to PPAZ, and this is now to be used for the provision of rings in Lusaka and Livingston. A larger scale rollout will commence once receiving rings from the CIF Global Fund EMAV mechanism. As part of their rollout strategy, Zambia would also like to expand their use of social media and digital solutions for demand creation. So now I'd like to run you through a few challenges that we have faced in terms of ring adoption and the strategies that we have then employed to resolve these. So firstly, looking at a limited population. with the initial EMA recommendation, the ring was recommended for women aged 18 and above and did not include any critical subpopulations like pregnant women as well as breastfeeding women. Now, through additional research, we have ensured that the label has been expanded to include women aged 16 and above, as well as pregnant and breastfeeding women. And I will take you through the details in my later slides. The price of the ring has also been a challenge compared to other products, and we have responded through providing a ring subsidy. The ring also in phase 3 clinical trials has shown modest efficacy of around 30%. And this has been a challenge. So in response to this, sub-analysis data from clinical trials that were conducted has showed that amongst higher adherers, higher efficacy rates are seen. Then we are all very well aware that there's been significant loss of funding for global health programs, and this also now includes the supply of commodities and funding of programs. We have responded to this challenge by offering ring donations to countries who have expressed an interest in providing the ring. So now focusing on the label expansions, there were 3 key studies that contributed to the label expansions. So the Be Protected study was looking at safety and acceptability of the ring amongst breastfeeding women. Findings showed a favorable safety profile with very low drug transfer to breast milk, which then supported the EMA approval to expand the label to breastfeeding women and then the subsequent WHO guidance updates in 2024. Then the REACH study looked at ring safety and acceptability in AGYW, so that was women aged 16 to 21. The findings showed a high acceptability of and adherence to the ring, and when provided with a choice, 2/3 of AGYW chose the ring. Through this data, the EMA has now approved ring use for adolescents aged 16 and above since 2025. The DELIVER study then looked at pregnant women in all 3 trimesters of pregnancy. This was divided into 3 cohorts in alignment with the trimesters of pregnancy. So the final report for this study is still underway. And from interim findings, what we can say is there's no safety concerns that were seen in all 3 cohorts. Once the final report is concluded, we will then move forward with submission of this data to the EMA. Now, focusing on the ring subsidy that I spoke about in my earlier slide, the cost of the ring has now reduced from $12.98 to $5.90 from the end of 2025. So this represents a greater than 50% reduction at a time when we know that global HIV prevention resources have significantly reduced. So this pricing also brings us closer to the cost of oral PrEP. Now on the topic of ring efficacy, many stakeholders have expressed concerns about the modest efficacy that was reported in clinical trials. There were 3 key sub-analyses that were conducted on phase 3 clinical data to determine what effect adherence had on efficacy. So these analyses showed that when the ring was used consistently, you would see much higher levels of efficacy, so as high as between 75 to 91%. And this is similar to what was seen in the early days of oral PrEP. And also, as I mentioned earlier, in terms of real-world data from implementation studies, the data we are seeing is supporting high efficacy of the ring compared to what was observed in clinical trials. Now I'd like to move on to how we support demand creation for the ring. So as we know, demand creation is the cornerstone for product uptake, and IPM and the Population Council have created multiple IEC materials as well as videos which have been translated into local languages, printed pamphlets, and frequently asked questions, just to name a few. We also have a global health provider training manual and counseling tools. So all our resources are available for download at www.prepring.info.org, and I would urge you to check out our link in this presentation. In addition, we supply countries with demo rings to use out in field when demonstrating how the ring can be used. It's always good for potential end users to look at the ring and feel the ring so they can get a sense of what the product is. We have also recently launched our social media pages and are supporting demand creation strategies in multiple countries. So regarding our social media pages, we collaborate with local partners to create content um, for different social media platforms. So again, I would encourage you to please visit us on Facebook, on Instagram, and on TikTok. So I would like to close my portion of the webinar by highlighting how very vital our collaboration with our in-country advocacy partners are. We have entered into formal agreements with local partners, and they bring significant experience with advocacy, awareness, and demand creation. They have been a very strong driving force in moving the ring and the choice agenda forward. So now I'd like to hand over to Emily, who will take us through the next portion of the presentation.
Thank you, Diantha. Are you able to hear me?
We can hear you, Emily.
Great. Thanks, Jim. So thus far, we've been talking about all the work on the ground to implement the DVR and expand access and choice. I'm going to talk about new product developments that are coming that will build on this groundwork. On this slide, you see that the monthly Dapivirine vaginal ring is the first product in a pipeline of women-centered prevention products that the POP Council and IPM South Africa are developing. As Diantha has already mentioned, we have a 3-month vaginal ring, Dapivirine vaginal ring in development, building on the monthly ring. This product is nearly identical to the monthly ring. It has the same flexible silicone body. It differs really only in the amount of drug that's available in it. It has 4 times the amount of drug compared to the monthly DVR, and is intended for 3 months of use. This will be, we're approaching this as a line extension. So basically it's sort of an added dosage form to the original product. And it is intended to replace the monthly ring in the market once it's available. We are also developing a dual prevention product, a Dapivirine contraceptive ring that includes Dapivirine and levonorgestrel. And I'll discuss that product a little more in a later slide. Go to the next slide. We see a lot of value in a 3-month version of the Dapivirine vaginal ring. It requires only 4 years rather than 12 rings over a period of the year. This reduces costs, waste, environmental impact. It can increase convenience to the user, and with that comes the potential for increased adherence. I want to spend a few minutes on this slide. This is discussing the clinical data available for the 3-month ring. The pivotal clinical data for the 3-month ring was collected through a relative bioavailability study. The aim of the study was to determine whether concentrations of Dapivirine coming from the 3-month ring were at least as high, non-inferior to, concentrations from the monthly rings, from using 3 1-month rings in sequence. And if the 3-month ring was non-inferior, was it also statistically superior? Those were the key endpoints that we were looking at. And in this graph, it may be a little hard to read, but the red line is the concentrations of Dapivirine coming from a single 3-month ring compared to the blue line, which is 3 1-month rings used in succession. And the scientific advice we had from the European regulator, the EMA, they were especially interested in the comparison of concentrations of Dapivirine right at the end of the treatment period, and overall across the entire treatment, the 3-month period. So as you can see in the blue box, the study results met both endpoints. The 3-month ring was both non-inferior and statistically superior to the monthly ring. This indicates that the 3-month ring should have at least equivalent efficacy to the 1-month ring. And the graph illustrates this nicely. You can see that the red line stays at least as high or higher than those blue lines, the blue line representing the 3 different rings used in sequence. We're often asked about the efficacy of the 3-month ring, and could it be higher than the 1-month ring? Because the 3-month ring is a line extension to an existing product, the EMA did not require that we conduct a full phase 3 efficacy study. So we do not have those data. We're not able to say definitively that this product would increase efficacy. But this study does demonstrate that the efficacy should be at least as high. And given the potential for, given the reduced burden of only needing one ring over a 3-month period, there is a good potential for increased adherence. And as Diantha discussed before, adherence is highly correlated to efficacy. And the higher the adherence, the better that efficacy should be. Another thing we were able to look at in this trial, within the study, participants used both treatments. So participants used a 3-month ring, and they also had the opportunity to use the sequence of 3 monthly rings. So we were able to, it was a great opportunity to look at acceptability between the two products. So here we're summarizing just the high-level takeaways from the acceptability outcomes. A majority of participants interviewed during the study preferred the 3-month ring, and that was driven by the greater convenience. Most participants would consider using the Dapivirine vaginal ring in the future. And if only the 3-month ring were available, most women would be willing to switch. So that gives us confidence in our strategy of eventually having the 3-month ring replace the monthly ring. So a lot of progress has been made towards bringing the 3-month ring to market. In November of last year, we submitted the line extension application to the EMA. So that is currently under review, and we're hoping to have a positive opinion on that dossier in this year. Meanwhile, we're further refining the manufacturing process for the 3-month ring to further enhance the cost effectiveness of the ring. So this is to reduce the cost of goods. As Diantha noted, we're currently subsidizing the monthly ring to make it much more in line with the cost of oral PrEP. With these cost efficiencies and in the 3-month ring manufacturing, that price point of being similar to oral PrEP will be baked into the cost of goods, and that will be a sustainable price point going forward. And finally, also in November of last year, we reached a really exciting milestone. We signed a commercial licensing agreement with Chiara Health, which is a 100% Black-owned South African-based pharmaceutical company that will take on the commercial activities and local regulatory responsibilities for the 3-month ring once it is approved in country. So this fulfills a long-held mission and goal for us to transition the leadership for the DVR to a locally based group. So returning to the Dapivirine contraceptive ring I mentioned earlier, this product has the goal of combining prevention of HIV and pregnancy into one convenient long-acting product. This is a little different from the monthly and 3-month rings we were talking about. It is made of ethynyl vinyl acetate, so a different structural component. And its manufacturing process is a little different. It has 2 layers inside it containing the 2 different drugs. It is intended to be a 90-day ring, so a 3-month ring, and it's a little stiffer, less squishy than the silicone rings, the monthly and 3-month rings, but is very similar to NuvaRing. It has basically the same dimensions and same mechanical properties. So this ring has been through, we're just finishing a phase 1B study that demonstrated safety, a fairly acceptable bleeding pattern, and the Dapivirine release in line with the monthly Dapivirine ring. So our next step is to take this product into a very similar trial design to the one I was describing earlier, a relative bioavailability study, and continue moving it forward as a multi-prevention product. So I'll just summarize the presentation so far before we pass it over to our advocates. The PrEP ring is truly a woman-centered intervention. It's fully under the control of the female. It's long-acting. It's discreet. We've talked about the fact that the efficacy demonstrated in the phase 3 studies was relatively modest, but that efficacy is shown to be much stronger when adherence is strong, with modeling and sub-analyses ranging anywhere from greater than 50 all the way up to 91%. The PrEP ring fulfills an important need in the prevention toolkit. It is the only approved product that is locally active rather than systemically active. It's women-centered and safe for a number of very important subpopulations that are highly at risk. We're excited that the monthly PrEP ring is paving the way for these other products I've discussed, the 3-month ring and the Dapivirine contraceptive ring. And when given the option, women choose and retain the PrEP ring in real-world settings, which highlights to us the need for more awareness and demand creation in the community. I think that's my last slide. Great.
Thank you, Emily. That was fantastic. Thank you, Emily and Diantha. We're going to just pause and see if there's any questions from the audience. If you want to raise your hand and come on camera and ask a question or make a comment. If not, we will have plenty of time once we hear from Chaloufia and Yvette. I just wanted to pause and see if there were any quick clarifying questions or comments. Okay, seeing that we don't have those at the moment, I am going to invite Chaloufia.
Hello, Jim.
Yes.
Sorry, thanks, Emily, thanks. I just want to ask one question. Is there any consideration in terms of maybe the finance in terms of switching to maybe from 1 month to 3 months for those that are not ready to switch? Is there any consideration for the issue of money or funding? The price. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Thanks.
Emily or Diantha, do you want to answer that question?
Sorry, I was just trying to unmute myself. So if I understand the question correctly, it was regarding women who may want to switch, who are on the 1-month ring and would want to switch to the 3-month ring. Is there consideration in terms of price? Am I understanding your question correctly?
Correct.
So in terms of the cost of the 3-month ring, it will be a more cost-effective product. So instead of requiring 12 rings in a year cycle, you would only require 4 rings. So we consider it to be a more cost-effective method.
Thank you for that, Diantha, and thank you, Kola. We will come back and we'll have plenty of time for more questions after we've heard from our 2 fabulous advocates and civil society members. We're going to first hear from Chaloufia Kasanda with Ascend Futures Foundation. Chaloufia, over to you.
Thank you. And thank you for the beautiful presentations from Diantha and Emily. I'm going to speak about the experience that we've had being one of the implementers from Zambia. As you may have heard, Zambia is set to start rolling out the ring. This has come as a result of a lot of work that advocates have put in, and I wish to acknowledge many of the young people and other advocates that are on this call today to support this work and who've been very strong in making sure that the ring come to reality, especially ensuring women are protected. So our Zambian experience has been that we have been engaging not only the government. Ascend has been positioned to be an organization that bridges the gap between the product developer, the government, and also the community itself. in our engagement with the government, we've been able to bring together IPM South Africa, the Ministry of Health Zambia, and other implementing partners like PPAZ in one room. And we felt as advocates that this was a very important aspect of the rollout of the ring. Before the ring comes to our communities, we wanted to make sure that there's a coordinated voice. Like Dianta mentioned, there's been a lot of concerns around efficacy and messaging. And as a St. Futures Foundation, we thought it was very important that we actually come up with a model that brings coordination between the key players to pave way for implementation. And in our work, we've been able to ensure that the guidelines for the ring have been developed in Zambia. Happy to mention that in Zambia, we're not looking at the ring as just an option, but it's offering choice. So it is not replacing any other option, but it's going to be an additional option that is going to offer protection to women who may want to use it. Another key lesson from Zambia is that we've been able to meaningfully engage with civil society. As you know, you can't do this work without bringing in a lot of stronger voices. We need allies to make this a reality. So we've been very intentional around making sure that we bring a lot of civil society organizations on board. And this is because Ascend might not reach out to all community players or the community itself. So we have been able to work with women groups and youth groups. And in this regard, we've been able to demystify any myths around the ring, and also just to preach the message around choice for the ring and making sure that women have the power to exercise choice, but also to practice self-care, because the ring offers us an opportunity to actually enshrine self-care in HIV prevention, knowing that this is an option which at a given time, a user may decide to actually self-insert from home instead of going to the facility regularly. We've also been able to bring other key players in our discussions. For example, the private sector. We know the landscape is evolving, and we know that there could be sustainability issues, especially accessing options just through the public health system. So as a St. Peter's Foundation, we've been able to engage with private entities that might be interested to be able to offer the rings in their private settings. And this engagement is still ongoing. Another piece of work that I'm proud of that I would want to share is the engagement with the young people and using social media. We know this time the young people that want to reach out to are mostly found on social media. So what we've been able to do through the support from IPM, we've been able to create content, social media content that speaks to the realities of the Zambian youths. We didn't want to use the global lens to develop these materials, but we've been able to localize our language, things that will resonate with them, because we understand that I see a comment. Sorry, Nala, I'm just speaking using my talking notes. I was asked not to make a presentation. Apologies. We've been able to use localization in messaging so that this can actually put a face to the option that we are talking about. We've also been able to offer myth-busting sessions where we bring in young people to just talk about their anatomy. In the video that was shown and in the presentation, we could hear Dianta echoing the importance of understanding the female anatomy. And that has been one of the difficult discussions that we've encountered in our communities. So we took it upon ourselves as an organization to make sure that as we engage, especially with young people, we want them to understand how their female anatomy is, for them to see that the ring can still safely work for them without harming their fertility. We also felt before the ring implementation could start, we need to do a lot of engagement in the communities, but also with key stakeholders. So as I speak, the rings in Zambia are in. Implementation has not yet started, and there's a lot of work to be done. But we feel with the work that we've done so far, especially having the implementation plans, being in place and having Ministry of Health have buy-in, and also PPSZ being one of the implementing partners, being ready to work with the community, we feel that is the way of ensuring that community voices can not only do advocacy, but there's so much more that community voices can bring to the table, and also making sure that their strengths can be leveraged on, especially when it comes to product introduction in the case of the Dapivirine vaginal ring. So I would love to just lastly mention the 4 key lessons in the Zambian context. Early coordination is very important as you start to plan for your implementation. Secondly, civil society partners should be engaged as much as possible. They should not only be used for information sharing, but they need to be well-resourced so that the community can have buy-in. Thirdly, localization is not optional. So as materials or information is being developed, it will be very important to consider the context in which you are developing the information. And lastly, we need to frame the Dapivirine vaginal ring in the frame of choice in the prevention landscape. There are so many options that are there. And if we want to win, we need to preach choice for this option to be easily uptakes, and also governments to buy in. Lastly, in closing, please check out our social media platforms. Ascend Futures Foundation, we are on LinkedIn, Facebook, and TikTok as well, and Instagram. Thank you so much, Jim.
Thank you so much, Chilufia. That was a beautiful presentation without slides. It's very refreshing we love the slides, but we also love it when you all just, present your hearts out without them. So beautifully done. Thank you so much. Lots of applause. And now our next speaker and our final speaker before we open it up to full discussion with everybody is the wonderful Yvette Raphael from Advocates for Prevention of HIV and AIDS in Africa. And as I mentioned earlier, a brand new board member for IPM South Africa. Yvette has been working on PrEP and choice and the ring for a long time. So looking forward to hearing Yvette's comments today. Take it away, Yvette.
Thank you so much, Jim, and thanks for inviting me. As you mentioned, my name is Yvette Raphael, and I'm the Executive Director of APA, but also, most importantly, is I hold the secretarial and chair role for the African Women's Prevention Community Accountability Board. And I think I want to shape my conversation around that and just exactly how far women's advocates and advocacy has come when it's regards to the ring. So the advocates, the African Women's Prevention Community Accountability Board comprises of 14 women in 7 countries. We advocate for choice, and our structure is that the secretariat is held by APA, ICW East Africa, as well as our communications with Waki Health, our membership, and then the different girls and young women that we touch over with our work. I also want to say we are organized in what we do with our geography being in East and Southern Africa, the Choice Agenda and the Choice Manifesto being the center of the resources that came out of our work. It's also important to understand that we do intergenerational work when it comes to leadership for HIV prevention and choice. What we do is prioritize choice advocacy in the prevention space with local, national, regional, and global level HIV prevention advocacy, our engagement with regulatory authorities, advocating for finance for choice, and advocating for the access to affordable, effective biomedical prevention methods and mentorship of young women and girls. So on that premise, Jim, I would like to then bring you into the South African context, where South Africa has been one of the countries that was lucky to have the ring being, tested in the research happening in South Africa. But most importantly, the IPM, or the organization IPM, is in South Africa. And with that said, a lot of advocacy in the very early days came into ensuring that women and girls understand what the ring is about, what HIV prevention choice is about. And we've seen from the earlier days big interest in women and young women and girls, interest in an HIV prevention option method that is actually localized, and understanding how that would affect the fact that the ring is discreet was very early one of the things that drew women and young women especially to the ring. But as things have developed, we have seen how efficacy and price has always been weaponized against the uptake of the ring. And we've seen so many struggles that African women and girls have faced, ensuring that the ring remains at the center of the discussions over the years. Because as if we speak about long acting, the ring has been one of those. But when you listen to so many funders and as well as policymakers speak about HIV prevention choice, centering the ring has always become very difficult. And recently, when we had our meeting with young girls, we listened to some of the queries that they've had, some of the, what I would say blockages at the clinics. As we remember, in 2025, February, around this time, USA then withdraw all its funding in Africa and South Africa particular. But we have been one of the countries that, as I mentioned earlier, have been able to offer all three, actually three choices in a clinic for over a period of time. So what that means, actually for a year, but what that means is that we prematurely aborted the choice aspect from the clinics. Nobody cared to look to see what is going to happen when, at the end of the day, choice is not offered. We know that young people had to make use with what was in the clinics, but unfortunately, the ring access in South Africa was stopped abruptly with no rings being available or even in clinics. And we know that has been such a difficult part of advocacy and young women not knowing where they will have to go when we talk about HIV PrEP uptake. In South Africa, we've just had over 2,000 young people and women taking up PrEP, and we know that the potential of the ring is so huge and would have been and made a choice for HIV prevention in the current state. But as we know that the ring is currently not available, and we also have one of our challenges, which is the Global Fund and CIV vehicle, that also abruptly have created bottlenecks as well as challenges for access for the ring, where many countries have applied for the ring access in their countries. However, this has not been an easy path with so many challenges put in front. So what we can say as not only the accountability board, but as women, is saying, make HIV prevention choice available for young women, make sure that the choice agenda stays on top, because there is no bigger a hindrance to HIV prevention than not offering a choice to young women who are going through different stages in their life and need those choices. We've done this research, we've done all of these options to ensure that young women get to access HIV prevention methods that suits them at where they are in their lives. And I also just want to say, as Chulifia mentioned earlier, the voices of young women is important. Advocacy for the ring will not stop. Advocacy to ensure that HIV prevention choice is a reality, and every method that is actually researched in our countries become available, and it is the woman to decide. Funders should not decide, policymakers should not decide on our behalf, but give young people the option, and we should not weaponize price and efficacy to reach our own goal and not the goals of young women and girls. Thank you.
Thank you, Yvette. Both of your talks were just beautiful. and so poignant and so on point. And I think it brings up a lot for us to discuss in this next half hour. We actually have lots of time to dig into these discussions. And I want to just kind of prepare Ann Philpott. I would love for you to come forward after we get to after we get through a couple questions and to talk about how pleasure and desire can be deployed in support of the ring. But I see first we'll go to Stephen McGill, who has his hand raised. Go ahead and come off camera, Stephen, and ask your question and make your comment. And Stephen, you're on mute if you're talking.
That I want to say thank you first, James. It's been a historical journey. Been with the microbe side, advocacy and coming to the far and seeing to it that they have something called the ring. I'm on the side of wanting to be part of the work that you guys do, especially in Central and West Africa, the where I do a lot of advocacy work. Currently, I'm in Huntington, West Virginia, in the Appalachia region, and it reminds me of Africa as a whole, likewise, too, because I'm dealing with rural population here and working as a health education and advocate in the community. My question is that how do this different from that which of the microbe and the ring, or can it be used? I just want to get an understanding. I'm coming back into this uh paradigm again in a different phase.
So you're asking how the ring can be used. Can you clarify that? Can you ask that question one more time? I'm a little lost.
My question is, I know we talk about microbe, the gel and all of that, and now we have the ring. So the ring is something new. And what is the difference? Oh, is it replacing that microbicide?
So we don't have, there is not a microbicide that has been proven safe and effective for use. We have pills, we have shots, injections, and we have a ring. Those
Okay.
are the types of prep we have available right now. Development of like a lubricant or a gel for a microbicide, you are right, we did years and years and years of work on that, but it really did not go anywhere. It was not seen, it was difficult to get the right dose in into the right places at the right time. So, the one place where a gel-like substance is still being tested is in the douche space. So there's a rectal douche being developed that could provide hygiene before anal sex and deliver HIV prevention. And that's in phase 2 studies at HPTN.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Sure. And then we have a question from Kola, and this is for Chilufia, but I imagine you all can speak to this. Kola asks, where are the men and boys in the adoption narrative? How do systemic power dynamics shape or limit the role of men and boys in the process? So I'm going to be bringing everyone up on screen so you can see them, but feel free, anyone who wants to answer that question, whether that's Diantha or Emily or Chilufia or all the above, please go ahead.
Thank you, Jim. So we've been very intentional as a St. Peter's Foundation to involve young boys in our advocacy on the ring, and we've gotten so much insight from them. And also on this call, I think I have 3/4 of the young boys that we're working with in the ring advocacy on this call who've been very instrumental in disseminating and also just giving them the much needed information for them to support their friends, female friends, or even their girlfriends in the quest to use the ring. Just last week, when Billy was in Zambia, I think we had an opportunity to talk to one of the ascenders who are male, and if they would encourage their female partners to use the ring. And with the information that they have now, their perception has changed and they're ready to support. So we have been intentional about giving them as much information as possible.
Thank you for that, Chilufia. And did Diantha or Emily want to add anything to that? Are we good?
No, we're good. I think Chilufia did an excellent job answering that.
I would agree. Thank you, Chilufia. So Julie has a question in the chat. Is there a pregnancy registry for women who become pregnant using the DVR?
So to answer that question, multiple studies have been done on ring use in pregnancy. So in terms of a pregnancy registry, this would be the onus of the country who will plan to roll out the ring. This will be should be roped into their routine data collection.
Thank you so much. And Ariana, I see your hand is up. Would you like to come on camera and ask your question?
Well, good morning, everybody. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers for creating this space for science communication and health promotion. I have been really impressed by the presentations. They have been excellent. Well, I have two questions focused on community engagement. In my country, I am from Ecuador. It's in South America. I have observed that the adherence to treatments or preventive tools like this this ring is not available here, but some other preventive tools can be a significant challenge. So, given this reality, I would like to ask how can we ensure that women truly understand its importance and feel confident using it? And additionally, I would appreciate if you could further elaborate the concept of promoting choice. I understand the idea in theory, but I would like to hear more about practical strategies to make this goal achievable in a real-world community settings.
Those are excellent questions. We could talk for hours about all of those. So I'm going to open it up to anyone who wants to take a first stab at that, and then it's open to all of you to answer.
Maybe, Jim, because my internet is giving me problems, I'll try answering the one around promoting choice. I think importantly is understanding and knowing what other HIV prevention methods that are in the pipeline. We know that there's an HIV prevention tracker with AVAC that you can identify and actually have a look at. But important is for you to know what is available, what is approved in your country, and how do you mobilize young people to ensure that they are the ones who demand HIV prevention choice. It's important for us to know that when we advocate for HIV prevention, we don't advocate for what works for us, what is stylish, what is cool, what is hip, and what is happening. With us as the African Women's Accountability Board, we know the commitment that we've made for young women and girls to say every HIV prevention method that is tried, that is tested, that is researched on our Black bodies will become available. That is why we promote choice and we follow the pipeline. We ensure that there's many other studies that are happening and coming up, and these studies needs to ensure for us as Black women, as African women, to ensure that becomes available. No product should be studied without a clear access plan, a clear, how mobilization plan. How are you going to resource mobilize for that? We don't want instances where a product becomes available and later on women are told this product is too expensive for them to access, not taking into account the expense of lives. Their lives also cost something. If you ask me about return on investment for African women and girls, that is access and that is availability. Make sure these products become available. That is our return on investment, not rents and cents, but our lives.
Thank you, Yvette. Thank you. And I'm glad your internet got fixed and you're back. Would anyone else like to add to that question or that answer?
Yeah, I would like to add, she asked a question around how do we ensure that communities buy into the idea of understanding choice. I think there's so much investment that has gone into making sure that communities are educated. And like Yvette mentioned, as advocates and as African Prevention Community Accountability Board, we've been very intentional around making sure that all the products, before they come to market, we need to have budget lines that actually speak to demand generation and community education, because we are not ready to give options to communities without them understanding. Because if you don't understand an option. You can make a choice. It's very difficult to actually know if there are any options that are there. And then choice is not a reality for anyone. So we have to be intentional around advocacy and also not to give up. The journey of the PrEP ring has been a journey of many miles. And here we are in some countries celebrating that we're going to have the ring. This didn't just start like yesterday. It's been a long journey and a lot of disappointments and crying, but we never gave up. So I would encourage you, Ariana, mobilize the like-minded people who you can work with and keep knocking on those policy doors to make sure that choice becomes a reality for the women in that country. Thank you.
Such an important lesson, Chilufia, around persistence and resilience and sticking to it. I saw Barbara Friedland mentioned in the chat when we were talking with Stephen about lube and gels being tested for microbicides. And actually that early work morphed into what happened with the DVR with the Dapivirine ring. So even those early years of things that we tried and didn't go exactly how we might have wanted have informed where we're going now. And I think the moral of the story is that we haven't given up, that we continue to fight for choice. We continue to make sure we expand the buffet and not limit the buffet. And I want to bring up a question that seems to, it comes up in our field and with our allies around efficacy, effectiveness, and really limiting choice. And it was so interesting to me. About a year ago, another prevention advocate spoke to me and said, or asked me, isn't it unethical to be providing or to be talking about options that aren't like the highest efficacy, that aren't 99% or above? And I thought, really, like unethical to talk about various options? We have all kinds of contraceptive options that have varying degrees of efficacy, and we share what that information is, and then people make their choices accordingly. But the idea that people only choose a product based on efficacy is so incorrect, right? We know this from contraception. And we know that, what really matters is adherence and the best the best option for somebody is a product that you'll use, a product that you'll want to use. So this is really for all of you to speak to. And then I do want to bring on Ann Philpott to talk about desire and pleasure. But I would love for you to talk about how do we address this issue around efficacy and people clutch their hands and their pearls when they say the DVR isn't as efficacious as another modality. Yet we all believe here that it's incredibly important to have as a choice for people. So how do we deal with those concerns, and how do we address those best?
Thanks, Jim. And I think I'll jump in here. And as we
Thank you.
know, is that a lot of these questions usually comes from not just the users on the ground, but policymakers and funders when they have to make a decision on what they want to fund or not. Very seldom does this question come up from women. It's something, as I mentioned in my presentation, that is weaponized against the ring so that it doesn't become available. People do not pay for it. One of the things is the price as well as efficacy. But we need to understand that every option and every method works if you use it. And we've learned over the years. That is why I said I sometimes talk about the unfair throwout of the ring. It's because even before the ring is given time as PrEP, over time to ensure, I'm talking about the prevention pill, over time to ensure that we understand what works and what does not work, what women want and how women want it, is that we have almost like given up on the ring, and that is unfair. But there's another question, Jim, before I drop off because I have to go, is the issue around men and male engagement. I know was not one of the questions, but we also get that a lot to say, how do you bring in men and boys? The ring and IPM has been in the forefront for male engagement when it comes to the ring, because we understood from the beginning that the ring is, even though it's something discreet, women does not have to ask her partner a question, but it was one of the things that we did not want women to find themselves in a position where men discover that they have a ring and they do not know how to, how to defend themselves. And we wanted women to understand, and we have as APA a mini campaign that we call Men and Boys for Choice, which is not talking specifically about ring, but also about HIV prevention. Most of the time when we talk about HIV prevention, many people think it's only supposed to be focused on the women. It's only the young girls that need to have the responsibility for HIV prevention. But we understand that these young girls that we are so much empowering also encounter their counterpart, which is boys. So boys also need to understand and know what HIV prevention is and how they play part, and not only play part, but also take up HIV prevention methods. It's only the ring, but there are that is specifically for women, but there are other options that men can also use. And it's also important for you to also be kind to your partners using an HIV prevention. So we're not leaving out boys. We know our target is young women and girls, but it's important for us to bring young boys to understand. That's why we formed a campaign, Men and Boys Championing Choice. Never forget that, because that is the future. And I always say the future is HIV negative.
Love that. Thank you so much, Yvette. And I know you have to drop, so thank you so much for spending some time with us this evening. And yes, love from the audience. The other three, do you want to weigh in on? I see Deonta, you are unmuted. Go ahead.
Thanks, Jim. So we constantly address the topic around efficacy. And I feel like what many stakeholders tend to forget is the journey of oral prep when it comes to efficacy in women. So I think there's some history we need to go back on, because as we know, oral prep for women in the clinical trials also had a moderate efficacy. So we know with real world data coming through that these numbers tend to improve. So we try our best when we message to stakeholders, to governments, to highlight that yes, when we look at the trial data, it is a 30% efficacy, but if you think about the analysis that was done, you lumped everyone into one category. We didn't really look at people who adhered to the product as intended. Another consideration when you think about the ring is that ring technology is not familiar within our region. At the time of the clinical trials taking place, this was largely a new technology. So I always go back to it's a social theory called the diffusion of innovations theory, where as a product gets into the market, yes, the uptake may look slow or low in the beginning, but as the product gains traction, women become familiar with using it, you will likely see greater uptake of the product. So I think it's still very early days for the ring. Some of the implementation data we've seen is very encouraging. So I believe more effort and resources need to be put towards that. And we will see this product being included as part of the method mix if it does. Thank you.
Thank you, Deonta. Emily or Chilufia, do you want to weigh in? Or are we good to keep the conversation rolling here? Go ahead, Emily.
I'll just mention, we highlighted it a lot here, but just the safety of the DVR, the fact that it's not a systemically circulating drug, it's locally active, that makes the side effect profile very, very minimal. The adverse events observed in clinical trials were the same as placebo. It also means there's very little monitoring that's required, lab testing, tapering off to end use. All of those things are just not a consideration with the ring, which makes it, implementable in a number of different health systems environments. So, I mean, that certainly is an advantage. If you want to try to expand the thinking beyond efficacy is obviously very salient, but these other pieces, I think, are also very worthy of considering as you're evaluating the options in the toolkit.
Absolutely. And I'm just really glad you've all made the point in multiple ways. Efficacy is obviously important, but it's not the only attribute that people care about. It's not the only attribute that wins the day. It's how it fits into people's lives, it's how it's delivered, it's how it feels, it's what kind of values that are imbued with this. It doesn't matter if a shot is really great at preventing HIV if you hate shots or you hate pills, right? It has to be something that you can live with and work with. And I think this kind of tees up really nicely now to see if Anne Philpott wants to come on camera for a moment and just talk about how, there has been we've heard from some users of the ring that they felt it made their sex better, it made their sex hotter, it made it more pleasurable. And so the role of pleasure in addition to safety and in addition to efficacy, would love Anne to just to say a few words about that. And I see you there, so go ahead, Anne.
Thank you. And as you know, I always love talking about pleasure, but thank you so much. I've loved this webinar. And what I've really liked is that there's been a lot of reference to building on history for other vaginally inserted products. And maybe it's because I'm getting older, but it just like swells my heart to actually build on experiences from the past, including, the introduction of the female condom. And one example that comes to mind is the Society for Women Against AIDS in Africa, who did an amazing campaign where they actually promoted the internal condom on the basis of it being eroticized, it being a sex toy. They marketed it with bim bim beads, which is like an erotic accessory. And I think that, there's a whole range of brilliant examples of how new products could be introduced on the appeal of a sex toy, of something that enhances your safer sex life. And we've learned also from history that actually it's not appealing to promote new products on the basis of it, stopping death or danger or disease. That's not what people go out on a Saturday night looking for. It's actually something that's really critical to them in terms of their sex lives. And we need to flip that narrative. We've made a lot of mistakes in public health in actually having a narrative which has only been about preventing fertility or stopping death. And now we've got really good evidence. The Pleasure Project with WHO did 2 systematic reviews over the last 4 years, and they're unique in that these questions have never been asked in this format, in a systematic review format in the whole history of the HIV epidemic. The first one showed that considering pleasure in sexual health interventions had a significant impact on sexual health outcomes. So there were more condoms used, there were more improvements in other sexual health outcomes. And we just launched one in September that showed that sex life concerns are more important for users of contraception than cost or access. So they actually stop using contraception when it affects their sex life, which is the kind of inconvenient truth that we magnificently swerve in our world, except when it comes to male contraception, when research trials are stopped, usually at phase 2, if it affects pleasure in any format. So this is also about tackling sexist assumptions about who pleasure is important for. But really, I think it would be great to really think about how in the early acceptability studies, users spontaneously said the ring was hot for them. And so how is that going to be maximized in terms of actually the introduction and making sure we don't make those mistakes that have been made with other products that then become totally associated with disease prevention? That's it from me.
Thank you, Anne. I'm wondering if maybe Chilufia from the ground in Zambia, how does this resonate with you in terms of engaging with communities and civil society around the ring?
Yeah, so I think we have made so many mistakes framing prevention around risk, and that hasn't done us any good. And there's been a lot of conversations with civil society to start shifting the narratives to say we should also, because in the Zambian context, we've seen a lot of women buying aphrodisiacs, right? Which they actually even drink and insert. So if they are able to do that for their pleasure, and if we flip the coin and bring in the pleasure component for prevention methods, I think we'll do ourselves a lot of justice instead of just framing it around a risk. And when you talk to young people, they actually shun seeking services because always you're talking to them about risk and not what they're seeking to achieve when they indulge in sex. So I think it's more important more than ever to start having conversations that actually speak to the realities of the everyday life of a person instead of just finding it in the public health lens.
Thank you for that, Shulufi. And I'm wondering if our friends from IPM/, Pop Council want to speak to the things Anne has brought up.
Just want to show gratitude to Anne for this consideration. I think it's a great lens to start looking at the product from. So I'd love to engage with you further as well. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Anne, as ever.
Thank you.
So, we are in our final minutes. We have time for some more questions. If someone wants to raise their hand and come off mute, we would love for you to do that. Are there any final questions or comments from anybody? We will give everyone a chance to do a final statement here.
Hey Jim, am I audible?
Oh, yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Thank you. So I have a question for Diantha. Diantha presented the trials data from Catalyst, Mosaic, and Mozambique, from where we can get more details on it.
So please feel free to contact me. I can share some of the interim analyses or the interim briefs that were developed. I'll pop my email address in the chat and I can send you those.
That will be very helpful, Diantha. Thank you.
Thank you, Diantha. Any other final questions before we go into our wrap up? Okay, so here is how I would like each of you to answer our final question or wrap up question for today. Um, I've expressed I do have some frustration as a longtime choice advocate and wanting to see the prevention buffet grow and add things to it. That includes condoms and internal condoms and all the kinds of pills and all the kinds of shots and all the new things, the DVR, the douche. There is also this pressure to push back and limit. I think Yvette spoke to that. You've all spoken to that in some way, to actually start to limit our choice. Say, well, why would we even give choices to someone, something that's something we don't think is as good as something else? So there's a lot of pressure. We have that pressure from governments, from funders. Things are getting tighter than ever. So I would love to hear what your thoughts are and what we can all do as an advocacy community of communities, civil society and researchers and allies. How can we continue to fight for choice and keep that buffet growing as opposed to shrinking when we get something new that we've all get excited about? How do we continue to really support choice and everything that it involves, which includes patience and perseverance? I'll go back to the early PrEP days. PrEP was approved at 40 something% efficacy. That was how we approved it. And we were all really excited. And then we saw over time that people who actually used it had 99, 90+% efficacy, right? But that took a long time. We approved it at 40 something efficacy. Yet we have these different standards, I think Yvette spoke to really well for products that are women owned and women controlled. So anyhow, before I go off on a complete rant, how can we all support you? Civil society, researchers, developers, what do you need from all of us to help make sure that this work stays vibrant and central and that we continue to expand tools for people as opposed to getting brand new things and then limiting in other ways? Who wants to jump in there?
So I'm happy to just start with one word to say collaboration. Just looking at some of the efforts we've made in the past. Some countries that were not keen in the beginning on including certain choices. Over time, we've seen that narrative shift, and that has just been really through the collaboration with us as a product developer, with wonderful advocates, with implementing partners, with civil society organizations. I think if we apply continued pressure and keep a consistent message, I feel that that will win us the battle. So we need to be as persistent as ever, but do it in a collaborative sense.
Thank you,
Jim.
Diantha. Who's next? Chalufia, there you go.
Yeah, so one thing I'm going to say is we don't get tired of telling our realities and our stories. Not one option fits everybody's lifestyle. And we need not to get tired. We'll keep knocking, and we need to be very strong. Only when we work together and we are strong, then we can achieve what we're set to achieve. And then also messaging. I think one of the most important advocacy tool is how you message your language around prevention. The issue around choice is something that is brushed off in some countries, but when you explain it further, simplified, and also relating it to everybody's lifestyle, and also making sure they understand that the choice that we're talking about, we're not talking about just numbers, we're talking about people who are faced with so many challenges. So we need to also invest in the communities, because communities actually are our strong allies. Governments most of the times will ask, do the communities want this? So we need to put a first to the community. We want to invest in the community, work with the community, and also make sure that we bridge the gap that is there between science, policy, and the communities. Thank you.
Beautifully put. Thank you, Chalufia. Emily, we're up to you.
I think this is building on what Chulufia and Diantha both said, but to me the limiting piece doesn't feel like it comes from the communities or the users. I think it comes from donors or the multilaterals, as you say, Jen, getting excited about the latest shiny thing. So I think really, educating, making sure that there is an understanding of what the prevention options could be. I see Julie just put demand creation. I think that's exactly what it is. Are people even aware of what their options are, and then listening to the voices of users and advocates and communities to actually allow the options that are being requested, and have that be driven from the bottom rather than driven from the top.
Right on. Communities first and foremost, beginning to end, front and center. And I think, and as members of community, I think we all just need to watch ourselves and take care in how we message these products to our communities. Are we inadvertently putting our thumb on the scale for one option or the other? Are we inadvertently prejudicing someone's feelings about something based on our own feelings? I think we all have to work really hard to present this array of choices in a fair and balanced way so people can decide for themselves and we help them make the decision for themselves. And too many times, I think that gets confused. We hear messages from developers and from pharmaceutical companies, and we take those in and we put those back out in ways that may not be fair to community, right? We're not here, none of us are here to make pharma rich. We're here to, prevent HIV and to find choices that fit for people and what people want to use. And I think we all have such a role and responsibility to do it. And it's exciting to me. I will never tire of it. And I hope none of us will tire of it. We keep fighting, fighting, fighting. It's exciting to see all the efforts being done with the DVR, continuing to innovate and continuing to work on this. And we are here for you as community. So thank you for everything you all do. I want to thank our speakers, Diantha, Emily, Chalufia, and Yvette. Beautifully done today. Thank you so much for the first webinar of 2026 being major, so wonderful. We have recorded this. We'll share the recording, the slides, and a resource document with the various links we shared within the next day or so. So look for that. I hope to see you all on our next webinar at the end of the month about injectors and task shifting. And we have a really great set of programs coming throughout the rest of the year. So stay tuned to your TCA channel and TCA radio. And with that said, I'm going to close out the webinar and again say thank you to all of you. Have a wonderful rest of your day, evening, and tomorrow. Ciao, ciao.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.